You're
Hi.
welcome to Black Royalty Radio. Shout out to everybody who's watched episodes one, two, three, or four. Thank you to everybody who's watching for the first time. If you're watching for the first time, this is an excellent first episode because we have the wonderful Miss Zariah Ivory joining us. Hi,
Hi.
Zariah.
Hello, hello.
Zariah, you are so when we talk about Black royalty, we talk about supporting, recruiting, and retaining educators of color, right? The idea behind that is as educators of color, there are certain things that come into our job description and certain things that don't go into our job description that all kind of flow into what we do, right?
For sure.
There's an element of this conversation that is being an educator of color in a predominantly white space, an element where it's just being an educator in schools and like in schools in 2022 that is different, right? So we'll just kind of explore your perspective. We'll learn some of the things that through the experiences that you've had and learned along the way through your story, and then we'll get into a conversation just about education and where you see it going, where you see it as right now, right?
Awesome.
So tell me about Miss Ivory first, right? Did you always want to be a teacher? Like, was it always in your plan that you were gonna teach these kids this sciencey stuff?
Yeah, so actually, since I was like 7 years old, I always knew I wanted to be a teacher.
Uh-huh.
Like I would be in my first grade classroom, and I remember I would like watch what my teachers would do, and I would think about like what I would do differently
Uh-huh.
and like organize it in my brain. So like I always had like the passion to become a teacher.
I love that. What was school like for you? Like, what kind of student were you?
I was like a great student.
I can imagine.
I think in high school I was a little lazy, but
Hmm.
as a kid, like as an elementary and junior high school
Yeah.
student, I definitely I strived to get all A's.
Yeah. So okay, tell me where you grew up and where the school experience is happening for you.
Awesome. So I grew up in New York City,
Uh-huh.
from New York, the entire city.
Yeah.
I started elementary school in Queens, Long Island City.
Uh-huh.
Junior high school I did in Brooklyn, Park
Okay.
Slope,
Okay.
MS 51.
Shout out. Shout out to the public school system, huh?
Totally. It was a great school. It was a magnet school. So
Yeah.
it was public, but like great.
Yeah.
And then for high school, um, my ninth grade, my freshman year, I went to school in Brooklyn,
Uh-huh.
Prospect Heights
Okay.
for 1 year.
Okay.
And then I transferred to Staten Island, Curtis High School.
Okay. So I grew up in Brooklyn too, and what I remember of the public school system, I think about my public school like time often because I think I learned the most about like street, right? Street smarts. I got a lot of street smarts through my time in public school. I don't know that I got the academic experience that I should have gotten, right?
Mm.
When you think back on your public school time, what distinguishes that for you as like as the way that you were prepared for life after?
Well, I definitely feel like I was more academically like
Uh-huh.
aimed
Uh-huh.
during those years. My mom did a good job of cultivating like that parent teacher student relationship.
Yeah.
So it was like I knew that my teacher and my mom were on the same page, so I knew I had to just
Dope.
keep it
Yeah,
together.
yeah,
There was a year though where I went to a school in Brooklyn in elementary school during second grade.
yeah. Uh-huh.
PS 273.
Ah,
I
I
remember
I went
everything.
to PSU 79.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah, it was in East New York,
Yeah. Okay.
and I went there in second grade. And that school, I don't want to say it was ghetto, but it was. I definitely some street smarts there.
You're right, right.
Yeah, it was definitely a different environment. And then I did that for 1 year. My mom was like, "Oh no,
Yeah.
we're out of here. We're
Y-
going back to where we were." So,
Yeah. What did you notice about the teachers there in terms of just their engagement with you? Like I talk about how my mom was the dean of my elementary school. So
oh,
like when
nice.
I'm in PS2 79, like I literally have somebody who's my touch point, right? I can always go back to my mother's office. I can be in communication with her regularly as much as I need to. Did you feel like you had a touch point like that in your
So
educational career?
it that 1 year in second grade, I definitely didn't. I feel like the teachers in that one school, the focus was more so on behavior and not academics.
Mm-hmm.
I remember there was one time that the class was just so rowdy and unruly,
Yeah.
where my mom was invited to the classroom to like watch our class
Oh
because we were
wow.
so bad.
Okay.
Partly me too.
Okay.
I was like chatting a lot.
Yeah.
And I remember my mom came to observe the class, but then that one day, everyone was good.
I can only imagine.
And then like the teacher like went over like this one story for so long to the point where my mom was like, "Is this what they're learning? Like
Right,
this is
right,
it?" You
right.
know? She wasn't impressed. So
Mm.
she didn't. There were no touch points at that school. So my
Okay.
mom definitely put me back in the other school where we were comfortable.
Okay.
And like I said before, my mom always maintained rapport with my teachers.
Yeah. That's
So
awesome. So when you get into these other schools where academics are pushed a little bit more, tell me about some of the relationships that you had with teachers that helped you develop along the way.
yeah, okay. I know I keep referring to elementary school, but
Uh-huh.
it was very fundamental for my life.
Yeah, for sure.
So I actually still have a relationship with my first grade teacher,
Okay.
Miss Mazzatesta.
Okay.
So I was her first class, like
Okay. Ever.
she ever, like her first year of teaching, I was her class.
Okay.
And she's still teaching now.
Okay.
Before I moved to California, I like had lunch with her and it was really nice like
Uh-huh.
to, talk to her. So I feel like I don't know if I'm answering the
No, yeah,
question.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
was she the only one? And what grade was she?
She was first
She
grade.
was
So
first
that
grade.
was like she wasn't the only one, but she was like the starter, like the
Gotcha.
she pioneer,
Gotcha,
you
gotcha,
know?
gotcha, gotcha. Do you feel like your teachers kind of made you who you are, or could you have gone kind of gone anywhere and you'd have still been you?
No, I definitely feel like I learned, like I had teachers that weren't always great, and
Yeah.
I had like Miss Stevens, hated her,
Yeah,
but like I still remember things I learned from her because she wasn't as great as I was used to, you know?
for
So
sure.
I feel like it's partly myself and like what I believed in
For sure.
and like, the actual teachers like work ethic.
Okay. So jumping forward to you starting your actual teaching career after planning it since you were 7, which is incredible. Um, are you emulating things that you saw in your teachers? Like what do you take from the teachers that you had and put into those first lessons that you were doing?
Well, definitely, I feel like creating like there's always like a boundary, a line between teacher and student. So
Uh-huh.
I'm always big on my number one thing is building rapport
Uh-huh.
first. So in all of my teaching career, I've always implemented like a morning greeting where I say, "Good morning, starshines." It's
Okay.
so corny, but it's like cute. And
Yeah.
it's like, if I don't do it, they're like, "Hi, where's the morning greeting?" You know?
Right.
So, incorporating just like things that build rapport with the students, letting them know I see them beyond just like, the formulas that they need to know and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah. And you're in middle school. Have you always been in middle school?
No. So currently I teach middle
Okay.
school. I started out teaching high school freshman.
Okay.
My first year of teaching in 2015, I taught math.
Uh-huh.
So like trigonometry, algebra 1, pre-calc. It was a mess.
Okay.
So many classes, so
Okay.
many preps
Yeah.
rather. Then my second year, I went into like bio, which I loved
Uh-huh.
because I feel like um, when you're teaching math, it's like you either get it or you
You're
don't.
right. You're right.
And I felt like with science, you can make it like they can relate to it. Like
For
you
sure.
can bring the real world into it,
For sure.
you know?
So there are two things that are going off in my mind, so I'm going to put a pin in one of them. I want to know about how you build that rapport in your classroom and things that you do to manage that. But I also want to know about like jumping subjects, right? Because I know that a couple of times in your career you have gotten put into these points where I don't know what this is, but I got to learn it so I can teach it,
Being agile.
right? So
Hmm.
how do you have that agility? Like how do you approach a subject that teaching a subject that you don't know intimately enough?
Well, I feel like when I have to teach a subject I don't know, I feel like it kind of is better
Okay.
because it's like I have to learn it.
Right.
And then, however I learn it and process it, then I like figure out other ways that others can process it
Yeah.
as well. So
Yeah.
it's like we're all learning this together, but we're going to figure it out,
Yeah.
you know?
For
And
sure.
I feel like, I don't really like to emphasize memorizing things. It's
Uh-huh.
more like connecting the material with whatever you have going on. So
Yeah.
that's.
So what does that look like in a lesson plan? Like, how do you marry those two in real time?
Um, okay, so I just photosynthesis just popped into my head,
Okay.
right? So, photosynthesis is the process which where plants make their own food to
Uh-huh.
survive
Uh-huh.
because we all know plants don't go to the supermarket to get food.
This is true. This is true.
I remember one year in New York when I would teach that I had one student, I like asked the class, I'm like, okay, so how do plants go to get their food? Do they
Uh-huh.
go to the supermarket? And one kid said yes. It was so funny. But from there we were
Right.
like, okay, obviously they don't.
Right.
Um, and then I'm like, okay, so what do plants need?
Mm-hmm.
Sunlight, water.
Yeah,
And just like putting those things together, the kids are also learning the formula for
for
photosynthesis,
sure.
And then we all know cellular
Mm,
respiration is like the reverse of photosynthesis. So then
we all know that. I didn't know. I'm like,
so then we like,
yeah,
once they have like the basis of photosynthesis, and it's like, okay, I can remember this other formula because
right.
it's like the opposite,
Okay. Hmm.
reactants, products.
Okay. So you always look for those kinds of formulas that you can kind of pull and play with.
Yeah, in economics, where like if we say something, I can't think of something right now, but
Yeah.
like no for negative, like I don't know, just little things where they can
Okay.
remember.
Okay. Okay. I feel like that's also super helpful in like a STEM kind of conversation, right? Where the sciences and the maths have kind of clear cut rules, more or less, because it develops. Do you think you could teach like a English class?
Honestly, when I was in high school, I remember, so I always would, in all of my classes growing up, like I would always think how I would do things
Mm-hmm.
better.
Mm-hmm.
And English class was definitely one of the classes where I felt like, oh my God, I would love to teach English. But like as I got older, I don't know.
Why
I don't
not?
know.
What do you mean?
Um,
Tell me about tell me about this hidden opinion about English teachers.
no, there's no hidden opinion. I
Mm,
just, I don't know. I kind of fell off that bandwagon once I
that's fair.
jumped on the science one.
That's fair.
But like, I'm not opposed to it.
That's fair. Nor should you be.
Maybe next year I'll teach English. Who
You
knows?
won't. Fair enough. So, okay, take me the other way. Talk to me about how you go about building the rapport with your students and why you emphasize that as such a point, right? Something to do every single day.
Yeah, again, it's like the human side of it. These
Uh-huh.
kids come into the classroom, they got to sit in here. A lot of times they don't want to be there,
Mm-hmm.
no matter where I'm teaching.
Yeah.
I remember in New York, so where I teach now, we have a block schedule, which I
Mm-hmm.
love
Mm-hmm.
because I don't have to see the same kids every day.
Mm-hmm.
In New York, I taught six classes and I had to teach those six classes every day,
Yeah.
like the same order.
Yeah.
So my first period, I saw them first period for the entire year.
Mm-hmm.
And I hated that because they were like literally zombies. Like
Yeah.
every morning, I'm like, do I need to buy you guys breakfast? Like, eat, wake
Yeah.
up. Like, where's the glucose? Where's
Yeah.
the energy? Um, so with that, I if I'm teaching a class where the students are like zombies, I have to do something to like bring some excitement,
Yeah.
make it
For sure.
alive.
For
So
sure.
like that's where building rapport comes in. So
Okay.
if I know something about a student or if I know a student likes something, the little things I try to remember.
Yeah.
Also, I'm not that great with remembering names all of the
Mm.
time.
Okay.
So I like to give them nicknames like Flavor Flav. And it's so great. I love it. Like
Uh,
I had a student once named Kimani and I would call him Kiki. I would actually sing that Drake song to
the
him like
key.
Kiki,
Uh-huh.
do you love me?
Uh-huh.
And like he hated it every time. Like he would be like, "Oh my God, can you stop?" Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
do that whole thing. And
Yeah.
then one day I stopped and I'm like, "All right, you don't want me to say it, I won't say it." So I would see him and I'll just wave.
Right.
And then one day he came to me after school, like came to my classroom and he's like, "Do we have a problem?" He's like, "What's wrong? Like you don't call me my nickname." And I'm like, "Oh, I thought you didn't like it." And
Right.
he's like, "No, I
Right.
do." So
Yeah.
those little things that show you that you see the kids,
Yeah.
it matters.
For sure. And I think a lot of times we can underestimate how important that relationship is to a kid. Like I think I'm always thinking about how any little thing that I do can be really traumatic or like really beneficial for one of my students just because like it's one of those moments, right?
Hmm.
Do you ever, or how do you deal with, maybe I'll say, do you ever first? Do you ever have students that like, there's just something there that it doesn't work. Like you can't build that same relationship either because they don't buy into it or personality difference or whatever. And then how do you teach that student anyway?
Yeah. I feel like, I mean, we teach for 9 months.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, within 9 months, even if there's a student who I just totally, we're not like clicking,
Yeah.
within those 9 months, there's going to be something that makes us click. So,
Yeah.
it's kind of like a we have no choice. We're in this together. We
For
have to
sure.
do it.
For sure.
And, you know, again, I just do what I always do. Like, if I know something about the student or if I know that just whatever connection I can make with them.
Right.
We have 9 months. Like,
True.
there's no way I'm ever gonna go an entire 9 months and
Right.
not make a connection. Like,
Right.
whether
Yeah.
it's I have to reach out to the parent and maybe we just need to all have a meeting to
Mm-hmm.
get on the same page. Like,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna do it.
Right, right, right. And just keep working at it and working at it
Yeah,
until it happens.
because that's what we're here for.
For sure. What are some of the things that you learned about teaching that you didn't know when you were idolizing it as a student?
Well, I learned a lot, but I want to be positive.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Um, I mean, to be fair, before I started teaching, I was working as a banker,
Mm-hmm.
for Bank of America,
Okay.
and there I felt like, this is so boring
Mm-hmm.
because people are just losing their debit cards, and
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't. You put it in
Yeah.
your wallet. Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to do this every day. Like,
Right.
this is so boring. I felt like my brain was like depleting. Like, it
Right.
wasn't being utilized.
Right.
So I had the idea, like, you know what? Let me just do teaching. Like, I can do it. I'll have summers off. Amazing. I
Yeah.
love that.
That
You
is true.
know. So when I went to teach, I'm like, this is great. Like, everyone is gonna be like me. They're
Uh-huh.
gonna be using their brains.
Uh-huh.
We're all gonna be happy.
Right.
Great workplace environment,
Right.
no toxicity.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And then I was in for a rude awakening.
Right. I mean, people are people everywhere.
People are people, and honestly, I worked in a high school setting my first job,
Yeah.
and I felt like the teachers kind of incorporated the high school mentality. So I kind
Mm.
of felt like I was in high school, but
Mm-hmm.
like the adult of the high school. It was very strange.
Yeah.
So it wasn't anything that I pictured. So
Right.
I had to do a lot of work in staying true to who I am
Yeah.
and like what my reason for teaching is
Yeah.
or was.
Right.
So I had to like ignore a lot of the things but like I was aware,
For
but just
sure.
like knowing how to navigate through it.
So how do you decipher that line between the things that are just kind of people things versus the things that you need to take in? Because like as a new teacher, when you're coming into that situation, I can imagine it's really hard to distinguish between things that are toxic and that I can push away versus, oh, I need to chew up the meat and spit out the bones from this kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it was really tough. My first year of teaching, like I remember thinking like if I'm ever a mentor, I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna make sure that the first year teacher that I'm working with is
Mm-hmm.
like good
Yeah.
because I just wasn't supported my first
Okay.
year and there are a lot of toxic things that I was exposed to. I taught in a ICT setting,
Okay.
which meant that I had a co-teacher
Okay.
and we taught like both special ed and general ed in the
Okay.
same classroom, 30 students.
Okay.
And it's like, okay, the co-teachers have to have a united front.
Right.
But then it's like when you're working with a co-teacher who's asking you questions like, so are you black and white?
Mm. Right. Right.
And it's like, why does that matter? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, it was just a thing where I'm like, are we working together? Like, what am I actually working against?
Right.
There were times where I felt like I was just like the only teacher, because I had to like ignore the other
For sure.
counterpart that I had in the
For
room
sure.
with me.
Yeah. What were the demographics of the school? Like, were you was it like a predominantly black school? Was it
So
a
I worked
predominantly
in East Harlem,
Okay.
which is also known as Spanish Harlem.
Okay.
So yes,
Okay. I love you,
El
Sister Charlotte.
Barrio.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But yeah, so the demographics were pretty much black,
Okay.
Spanish. There were white students as well,
For sure.
but the majority were Hispanic and black.
Okay. What about the teacher population?
Good question. So it's like when you have that population of students,
Uh-huh.
the teacher should kind of match that
Right.
possibly.
Right.
So there's like a relation, a relatable quality,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
I feel like it was a little
For
lopsided,
sure. Okay.
and I felt like there were definitely culture boundaries where students just weren't interested because they're like, this lady's from Long Island. She doesn't know my life.
Right.
She wants me to do these
Right.
10 questions, but she doesn't know that when
Right.
I go home, I have to like take care of all my siblings
Yeah.
and cook dinner, like,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So,
Did you see any of those teachers do a good job of that? Like, did any of them go out of their way to do something that built relationships, or was it always just I'm here to get I'm here
I'm
and I'm
here to
gone?
get, you have to get the good grades because everything was like numbers driven in the public school
Right.
sector.
Right.
Like you're rated on your MOSL, the
Mhm.
measures of student learning.
Mhm.
So they're trying to see, at the end of the year,
Mhm.
there's a projected number that the state thinks the student will, their projected score.
Mhm.
And at the end of the year, we want to surpass that number. So
Yeah.
it was a numbers game. So
Yeah.
it's like, if the student was great academically, then yeah, you're going to get more attention. But then
Yeah.
if they're not, then it's like stress
For
and
sure.
confusion
For
and
sure. Hmm.
no support or lack of support.
Yeah, there's a long conversation that we could have about like how expectations play into the grades that kids get and like whether we should even have grading at all. Maybe we'll get there later.
Hmm.
But first I want to get into this about the teacher student relationship. Do you think that students of color, black students in particular, do you think they need a black teacher?
I think it's beneficial.
Okay.
I mean, my first black teacher was Miss Johnson, and that was
Okay.
at PS 273 in second grade.
Okay.
And
Wait, the second grade one that
that was the
okay.
second, yeah, so that was my one black teacher in the
Okay.
crazy school
Okay.
in Brooklyn.
And that's the only black teacher you've had in your career? Your
In
student career?
college, I had a black professor for my African American studies class.
Okay.
In high school, oh, I did have my senior year, I had a black teacher, but
Okay.
she wasn't good.
So maybe three. So let's start with
She was
Miss
an English
Johnson.
teacher.
So let's start with Miss Johnson. Did Miss Johnson do a good job?
No, it was behavior based. Like there were
Okay.
kids in that they were fighting. Like
No, I
I was
remember.
in second grade and I remember breaking up my first fight in second grade. Like
Yeah.
one girl like she had braids in her hair and the other girl like pulled her hair and the braid uprooted and I was like, "Oh
It
my, like
used to
this is
be it
crazy."
used to be a thing that like we had fight appointments. So
Oh,
like in my junior high school there was a train station that was like 2 blocks away. And if you had a problem with somebody and you were gonna fight them, you were gonna fight them under the train station. And it was so ridiculous to a point where like we would have multiple fights a day and people were like, "Oh, you're not up yet. Like it's not your turn. Hold on."
wow.
Or sometimes it would be like, "Ah, we can't do a fight today." It's literally like a meeting schedule
What?
for these fights.
Yeah.
But
The
I
fact
think
that a system was developed for
no, it
fighting.
was crazy. It
Yeah.
was crazy. But the thing is, like, fights aside, it was what it was. I learned socially so much in that public school dynamic that in private school, when I got there, I was learning different things and I was learning valuable things on both sides. But I never got the social lessons that I got from junior high school. I feel like I still lean on those things, right?
Mhm.
What school system do you feel like is most beneficial for students? Especially like
That's
I'm
a good
also thinking of
question.
of the fact that you're a mom, right? And so like when you think of the schools that you put your children into, right? Do you lean towards a private environment or a public environment?
I lean towards the environment, which is the most promising. You
Mm-hmm.
know, what the school sells versus what you can actually see that they're actually selling.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now, I'm working at a private school, but my daughters, they go to a public school.
Mm-hmm.
But in our district is known for having like a really great public school. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with them
Mm-hmm.
at their school
Mm-hmm.
currently. Um, Honestly, I was so impressed. We moved here during the pandemic. They were
Mm-hmm.
in third grade at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was worried because third grade is a very pivotal year in any child's life,
Yeah.
academic life.
Yeah.
That's when in New York, that's where you start taking your state exams
Mm-hmm.
and all of that,
Mm-hmm.
get your good rest. a good night's sleep,
Yeah.
eat breakfast in the morning, and then
Yeah.
you take those Scantron tests, you know?
Take those
So with
scans.
the pandemic and my daughters being at 9 years old, I'm like,
Uh-huh.
OMG, I remember third grade. Like, I wonder how this is going to be for them
Right.
because it's totally different right now.
Right.
And I was so pleased with
Mm-hmm.
like their learning. I mean, they didn't have to take any standardized tests
Yeah.
in third grade, but they did this year in fourth grade.
Okay.
But they learned so much.
Okay.
They learned so much during their third grade experience here, and I was super pleased. And things
Okay.
I looked for was, their growth as students,
Yeah.
their maturity levels as well,
Yeah.
because that does play a part.
Yeah.
The way they just like the way they take on learning,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
if they're taking responsibility, being accountable for,
Right.
even though they're in third grade, if you
Yeah.
have a book report,
You got a book report.
you have
Yeah.
a book report,
Absolutely.
how are you going to handle that, so
Yeah.
like letting them have that freedom. Like, I mean, mommy's going to support you all the time, but
Right.
like I want to see what you can do on your own.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I just look for schools that nurture their
Okay.
learning needs.
Okay. Are you the kind of parent you would want to have in your class as a teacher?
Wait, what?
Like, are you as a parent to an outside classroom? Are you the kind? Do you have the kind of parent student teacher relationship that you would want to see as a teacher who's looking at this parent?
Wait, I'm literally not reading your question.
Okay, so
I'm not following.
you're
Sorry.
a parent on one side and you're also a teacher,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
As a teacher, you have a certain desire for the kind of relationships that you have with parents in your class.
Mm-hmm.
And as a parent, you have a certain desire for the kind of relationship you want to have with your kid's teacher.
Mm-hmm.
As a parent, are you the kind of parent that you would want to see as a teacher? Did I lay that out better?
I think so. So like if I were a parent, would I like Miss Ivory as a teacher?
Yes, and if you're Miss Ivory, would you like Mother Ivory as a parent?
Oh yeah, totally.
Okay, just making
All
sure.
across the board,
Just making sure because
Yeah.
you know my daughter's only one. She's not in school yet, but I'm constantly thinking about like what those parent teacher conferences are like. I don't know why that's one of the things that just flips into my mind.
You should.
But I'm like, I'm really gonna be wanting to see lesson plans. Like I want to know the thing. And when I have this conversation in my own head about the right school environment for her, I think any school can be a great school. I think it really comes down to the teachers and the administrators in those buildings. I think public schools have to deal with some state stuff that makes it a little tricky, but I think any school can be a great school. But at some point, it gets to a resources conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where if you have 30 or more kids in a class, you're just not giving them the same attention as 12 kids in a class.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't have that kind of time. So resource wise, I think, particularly in high school or going forward, I would want her to be in like a private environment just for those resources, right? How does that balance in your mind of the decisions that you make for your daughters?
Yeah, so again, like when we lived in New York, they went to like charter schools
Mm-hmm.
versus going to like a public school,
Mm-hmm.
because there is a difference.
Right.
Even though the teachers seem super stressed out on the outside,
Right.
I feel like they really do a lot of due diligence and they
Uh-huh.
put a lot of effort into like teaching the children.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like with their school now, one of the things that made me super comfortable, because I was super uncomfortable when we first moved here. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, I just uprooted us. What are we about to do?
Right.
But one of the things that made me comfortable and relaxed was the fact that meeting their third grade teacher, Mrs. Longtain,
Uh-huh.
she instantly reminded me of like the teachers from my elementary school, the good ones.
Uh-huh. Fair
Like
enough.
she instantly gave me those vibes. She was like an
Yeah.
older teacher. She's been teaching for 30 years.
Yeah.
And she
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
woke.
Oh, okay.
So that's important,
Okay.
and I think yeah, just having that relationship with the teacher to see what
Mm-hmm.
she's about really does play a difference
Yeah.
in like the comfortability level. Like, I don't know, do you guys know how many students are in your class?
There are 28 students.
Okay, so they
So
have
yeah,
28
okay.
students in their class. They're actually in the same class. They're twins.
Super
And
awesome.
when I have my parent teacher conferences like with their teacher this year, like I felt like everything was tailored.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
even though they have 28 kids in their class, I think there are only 2 fifth grade classes,
Yeah.
and at their current school, they have a system where the
Oh, you're
principal.
saying something wrong. It's three.
There's
It's 3
three fifth grade.
fifth grade classrooms.
Oh, excuse me. Okay, finish playing chess.
Which, by the way, like they're sitting there playing chess and like they're so quiet, wouldn't even know that they were there if we weren't talking to them.
Yes,
That's
good
good
job.
parenting,
Thank you.
which is gonna inform my next question. But finish this answer.
Oh, wait.
Now you're not even thinking about that answer
I
anymore.
wasn't thinking about it anymore.
Okay, we'll cut that. But
Okay.
how has your experience as a parent impacted your experience
Oh, I remember what
as
I
a
was going to
teacher?
say,
Oh,
actually.
finish what you were
So
gonna say.
their
and we'll-
teacher, their
okay.
principal, they have the system where they she combs through and reads each and every report card
Uh-huh.
at report card time. And if a student like does exceptionally well,
Uh-huh.
then the principal she'll like sign it, and that's like a big deal at their
Oh,
school.
super dope.
And they both have the principal's
Hey, no
signature,
big
you
deal. Way to
know.
go. Way to go.
So
Way to
I
go.
definitely feel like though they have a larger class setting, I feel
Mhm.
like their needs are being met,
Yeah.
to answer
Yeah.
your question.
So, okay, then take the question that I asked and put it on the table for a second. Do you feel like as black students or as black females that they need a certain education that isn't just for all 30 people in the classroom?
Yeah, I mean, definitely in terms of just being black. When you say that, I think of hair.
Uh-huh.
And I know like hair is definitely a big important thing for me. Like
Mhm.
growing up for me, um, my hair was a little different than the
Mhm.
other black girls in my class.
Mhm.
But like my daughters have like that hair that I didn't have.
Yeah.
And I love their hair so much because it's so much fun to do.
Uh-huh.
And like I feel like it's kind of like my job, you
Uh-huh.
know, like I have to do the work of like empowering them in areas that I'm
Gotcha.
sure their school won't.
Gotcha.
You know, even though when they went to HVA, Harlem Village Academy,
Uh-huh.
they did a good job at representing like just blackness.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like they had pictures of like Yara Shahidi. Do you remember that? At HVA, that all the posters they would have up, and just like seeing things like that is so important because it's like, oh hey, like her hair looks like mine, like
Yeah.
okay, like
Yeah.
I don't have to, my hair doesn't have to look a certain way for it to be nice. It can
Yeah.
look nice the way it is naturally.
For sure. Did you have those touch points as a student? Like, I'm thinking of, you said you only had 3 black teachers. One's in second grade, one's in senior year of high school, one's in college. How did you learn these lessons about your own blackness
From
in this time?
from my parents, like my
Okay.
grandmother, my mom.
Yeah. Yeah. They filled that
Um,
gap too.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Because I mean, yeah.
What was something that you learned about being black or black people or just racial dynamics in America that changed your lens that you teach through?
That's a loaded question.
Is it? You want to know my answer first?
Sure.
I think for me, there's like a number of things. But one of the things that I learned that kind of really just messed me up a little bit was the connection between black and brown, and like how it was always just this mass category that we call black, right? So the terms black and white mean so much more than what they mean because white was this inclusive label or exclusive label that was only for a certain selection of people so that we can elevate them. Whereas black was an inclusive term where it just applies to all of these kinds of people who have any of these common traits so that we can exclude them and say that what they're not. And for me, like that understanding made it more than a color thing and made it almost a cultural thing. And like my the passion that I kind of speak about for or against white supremacy sometimes comes rooted in that argument that like I think we don't have that conversation enough. Kind of
Yeah,
thing.
I feel
Does
like
that make
I'm
sense?
still in a gray area there because I feel like there's still a lot that I'm figuring out
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
learning for myself.
That's
I
always true.
remember when I was in kindergarten,
Uh-huh.
my teacher was Miss Dysart, and I remember she taught us about Christopher Columbus
Uh-huh.
because I guess we had a day off for Christopher Columbus Day.
Uh-huh.
And they're like, oh, who's Christopher Columbus? Let's teach you. So I'm like, oh, wow, he
Yeah.
discovered America? Like, this is so crazy. So I go home all excited, telling
Uh-huh.
my mom and my grandmother about what I just learned in school. And I remember feeling so confused after because my grandmother was like, that's a lie. And I'm like, no, but she's my teacher.
Right.
And my teacher knows what she's teaching.
Right.
So, like, what are you talking about? You don't know what you're talking about. He found America. And then they had to, like, sit me down.
Right.
And for my
Like a
little
whole open.
5-year-old ears, like, they tried to make it make sense to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
So then I remember always feeling like a sense of, like, betrayal almost from my teacher. I didn't know who to believe. It just, I was confused.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I mean, I've learned more because that was,
Right.
25 years ago.
Yeah.
But I'm still kind of confused.
There's a lot to be confused
Because
about.
it's like,
Yeah.
even when I have my own children
Right.
and, we buy all the books to empower them.
Right.
Separate Not Equal is a book that just came to my mind that I bought for them when they were like in second grade about a Mexican girl who wasn't accepted at her school. She moved to
Okay.
California. So it's like, teaching them this,
Yeah.
but it's like, okay, we know this information, but what do we actually do with it?
Right. Right.
And that's where I feel like I'm like, I don't know.
Okay.
You
Okay.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. There's always more to know, right?
Yeah.
So, do you do something to intentionally develop yourself, like personally, outside of just your professional development?
I mean, I'm always reading
Okay.
or trying to read
Yeah.
or watch documentaries or like if there's something that I heard about as a kid and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, wait, maybe it's time for me to actually learn more about it.
Right.
Like Malcolm X, right?
Uh-huh.
I had like my Malcolm X stage. First of all, I love Malcolm X. Like
For sure.
so cool.
Why would you?
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
such a man.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Love him.
For sure.
So like I always knew the story kind of,
Uh-huh.
but then like as I got older, I started learning more.
Yeah.
But it's so hard though. It's like
It is
so
hard.
difficult because it's like you learn it and it's like it kills like your
Yeah.
hope kind of because
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. Right.
yeah,
It's definitely hard to
it's
live
so
with.
hard. Like first of all, when he was murdered,
Mm-hmm.
right at the
Mm-hmm.
ballroom
Mm-hmm.
in Harlem.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, we lived right there. Like we just moved from where he
Oh
used
wow.
to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I used to feel it. Like
Yeah.
and just to know that like they literally he was shot,
Mm-hmm.
killed,
Mm-hmm.
and they disrespected the crime scene.
Yeah.
Like they had a ballroom dance. Like whatever they had scheduled after,
Yeah.
it continued.
Wow. Wow.
Ah,
That's yeah. Mm-hmm.
like ouch, like disrespect.
Disrespect. The history is
And
littered with
and
these
everything
moments.
he
Yeah.
was saying, like if you listen to any speech that
Mhm.
he's made,
Mhm.
it applies today.
Mhm.
It's so relevant.
So, in the light of that, and with the knowledge of that, right?
Yeah.
On one hand, you're handling this as a mom, and you're supplementing the lessons that your kids are getting in school with your own lessons at home, and whatever form or shape those take, right? How does that impact your teaching, though? So when you're teaching a group of kids, and now you're teaching in a space that is predominantly white, right? So how do those lessons, or do those lessons even, start to creep into your science curriculum or whatever
Well,
else you're
I
teaching?
definitely there are a lot of Black women in science.
Mhm.
So, like for Women's History Month or just any time, I'm always like making them aware.
Okay.
And I feel like that's all I can do. I
Yeah.
can't like make them have empathy. I can't like make them feel anything.
Right.
If they say anything disrespectful, I will correct
For
them.
sure.
You know,
For sure.
I had a student this year
Mhm.
say like, he referred, we have our morning announcements.
Yeah.
He referred to like the Black history fact. It's just like, oh, the fun fact.
Uh.
And I was like, the what? That is a Black history. Like you're gonna put some respect on that fact, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like so I always correct them in those points.
Yeah.
And just like bringing light to like Blackness and Black greatness.
Yeah, for sure.
Because there may be a lens
For sure.
that they view Black people through, which
Mhm.
I feel like it's part of my job to like break that lens if it's not a good one,
Yeah.
you know?
Do you get to have those conversations explicitly in your classroom, or is it just like you have to wait for something to come up? Because just honestly, I'm as an English teacher, I feel like I have a terrible understanding of what happens in like a math or science curriculum. Like I've been in those classrooms, I've seen those teachers, and I've seen incredible teachers teach both of those subjects. But in my mind, it's very kind of formulaic, right? Like we're learning addition today. These are numbers. There's no room in there in my mind to get into any type of social justice conversation just because it's kind of that formulaic.
Yeah.
Is that true, or how do you do it?
I mean, kind of. So, like, an example that's coming to my mind now is um, Henrietta Lacks,
Mhm.
which we all know. She was a 35-year-old black
Mhm.
woman who went to a hospital to receive help because she had cancer
Mhm.
in her cervix,
Mhm.
and they couldn't help her. But then, like, they were able to extract her amazing cells that are
Mhm.
literally immortal and are still being used
Yeah.
till this day, and none of her family were compensated.
Mhm.
So that's definitely something that, like, I teach my students, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what do you guys think of that?
Right. Right.
You know,
Yeah.
like, let's actually think about like, yes, her HeLa cells have been impactful and helpful. I feel
Yeah.
like they were even used in for COVID, like
Yeah.
COVID testing, the beginning. Like, I feel like they used some of her cells in testing the COVID
Yeah.
vaccine.
Right.
So it's like her cells have been majorly impactful, but like her family has not been compensated ever.
Mhm. 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 Yeah.
How?
And that's just one of those stories for sure.
Just one.
Right.
So it's like I bring moments like that, like stories like that up to my students and have them think,
Yeah.
critically think. I'm all about critically thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you respond to like
Nonchalance. Like a nonchalant attitude.
how do you respond to nonchalant attitude? That wasn't what I was about to say, but yeah, how
Uh,
do you respond to
well, that's
nonchalant?
what I thought of
Go for
because
it.
I feel like I experience that sometimes.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, if someone is nonchalant, I'm just like, hi. No,
Right. Right.
critically think. I just bring them back,
Yeah.
like ask them the question again,
Yeah.
and like we'll just I'll keep asking until like I get a different answer
Right.
that shows me that you're actually.
It's kind of brought up often of the value that black teachers bring to black students or teachers of color bring to students of color. What value do you think is added for a white student to have a black teacher or a teacher of color?
Again, I think they just get to whatever like implicit bias they may have had.
Mm-hmm.
If you've never had a black teacher, um, implicit bias is a real thing. Everyone
Yeah.
has it,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and I feel like it breaks that barrier of like, oh, I have a black science teacher.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Is she smart?
Right.
That's definitely a thing.
Right. Right.
And then you just gotta show them like, and it's not even about if I'm smart or not. It's about my job here is to facilitate skills that you can use now
Mm-hmm.
and like use forever.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I feel like, me being strong in my mission,
Yeah. Yeah.
that is it.
I love that.
Yeah.
How does that does that feel different in a public school setting that you're working in versus the private school that you're working now?
um, hmm, um, a, mm, a little bit. So like
Okay.
when I'm a public school baby for sure. Like
Okay.
public school all throughout.
Okay.
And one of the things that I was so excited about becoming a teacher in a public school was the fact that I was a product of public school education.
Right.
So I felt like, oh my God, if I could do it, you guys could do it.
Right.
Like that was literally my attitude.
Yeah.
Until I met them and I was like, oh, everyone wasn't raised like me. Like everyone has a different experience. Like even though we're all in this public school
Yeah.
setting,
Yeah.
everyone has a different home life
For sure.
experience.
For sure.
That ultimately shapes like their attitude towards school.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember a long time ago, I had a student in New York. He literally told me that he woke up in the morning because he had like brothers, older brothers, and He told me that one of his brothers were like on the run.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, yikes. And he woke up to a gun like pointed at his
Wow.
head
Uh-huh.
because the police were looking for his brother. So they
Yeah,
no
yeah.
knock came into his apartment, had a gun at his head, and he woke up like, and then he had to come to school.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot.
So like, how do you think he did that day in school? You
Right.
think he was like ready, like, oh yeah,
Right.
let's photosynthesis? Like, no, he was like, I'm gonna put my head down. I had
Right.
a rough morning,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I feel like, and that's an experience that I can't relate to,
Right.
but I can empathize with it.
For sure.
So I feel like, teaching my public school students, I went into it thinking like, oh, this is gonna be so easy because I did it, but then I had to learn like, okay, no,
Yeah.
every individual is different,
Hmm.
and I'm gonna just, learn as I go.
Right. That seems like it goes back to one of your earlier points about building that rapport with students and building those relationships with students, because when you can have those check-ins, those times when something happens that's just bigger than your classroom have to be addressed, because otherwise if you don't address them, then you just carry it around and you think about it all the time, right? I think that's true for us even as teachers, right? Like, I think all people are like that. If something happens in your life or if something happens in your day that's just kind of too heavy to hold, then you think about it. It's at the front of your mind until you process it. With Black royalty, the ways that teachers of color carry that additional stress, I think falls directly into that category. And I think the way that we start speaking to retention and keeping teachers in the profession, like even in the 2022 where there's like a national teacher shortage, right? But it starts with community, and it starts with being able to have somebody who you can process those things with, right? For me this year, that's more or less been you, right?
Oh, I
Because
love that.
like I'll
Same.
I'll come knock on your door just randomly and just be like, Zariah, oh my goodness, right? And it's not anything in particular. It's just like what we're dealing with, what we're going through in our day, right? How unique is it, the things, the ups and downs that you go through as a teacher? Like, how do you process that even when you're home? Like, how do you balance the work life of it so that you can be your fullest self for your kids, for yourself, and for your student?
I'm still working on it. I'm still a work in progress. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I try all the things that I can try.
Mhm.
Like, in terms of, I know like when I first started teaching, everyone was telling me you're gonna cry every day.
Mm.
And I'm like, no, I'm not. And then my first year, even though that was the toughest year, I actually didn't cry every
Mhm.
day. But it wasn't until my second year where I'm like, oh, is this what they mean? And I would like go home crying. I felt so sad.
Yeah.
Because it's just a lot. It's so many things.
Right.
But I feel like just practice creating great habits and not forgetting like what your actual mission
Mhm.
is, and
Mhm.
don't let anyone ultimately sway you away from it,
I love
because haters are always gonna hate,
that.
you know?
Yeah.
No,
True.
for real.
True.
I look at them like that, like, you know, or the situation like that, you know?
Right.
So I feel like, oh, that's just a hater, so I can't let it penetrate my
Right.
bubble of like happiness, you know?
What does self-care look like for you?
Oh, I was just about to
I
say.
love that.
So, like, working out is
Uh-huh.
definitely a thing for me. Actually just joined Equinox. Love it
Uh-huh.
there.
Uh-huh.
So great. It's an experience.
Love that.
But yeah, like working out, doing yoga, stretching.
Mhm.
Stretching is so important to me. You know, I told you
Mhm.
this off
Mhm.
camera.
Mhm.
Just being able to stretch and breathe, oh, I've actually started in my little morning routine with some of my students. I'm
Uh-huh.
like, let's just do some breathing
I
exercises.
love that.
You know, I'm like, I do yoga now, so guys, we gotta practice this. And they're
Yeah.
like, okay.
Yeah.
You know, so just like keeping my self-care like priority,
For sure.
and even spreading it to others so
For
they can
sure.
also join in on the good vibes.
For
Like,
sure.
yeah.
I love that. I was One of the things I was going to ask you was like, how does it look different to teach in 2022? And I think you speak to it when you talk about those social emotional kind of things, right? I want to go into a new segment that I have called Hot Takes. I have opinions,
Okay.
and they might be opinions that I agree with, might be opinions that I disagree with, but we'll just go for it. We have a hand in the audience. What's up? What's up? She should have candy.
Is there candy to have?
I don't know.
She saw.
Oh, it's
Oh
out there.
goodness.
We'll get you candy as soon as we turn this off. Okay.
Yeah, not right now.
Give me 10 minutes. I got you.
Totally.
Okay. So just hot takes about anything in education, right? And you don't have to. You're not the end all be all. Just your opinion on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
One hot take: school was better in the pandemic. Agree or disagree?
Like during the pandemic or
During the
before the
pandemic.
pandemic?
During the pandemic.
School was better.
Yeah.
No.
Why not?
Um, because kids were home and they were chilling. Like what? Are you kidding? Like it was not better.
Yeah.
If the kids, depending, because I actually, and during the pandemic, I taught both private sector and public
Uh-huh.
sector. The pandemic started, I was still a public school, high school teacher,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to transfer everything online, and
Yeah.
that was literally a hot mess. I was also working on my 10-year binder. It
Yeah.
was just, and I had to teach them. So it was, oh my goodness,
Crazy.
a hot mess.
Crazy.
And making sure like my Wi-Fi was good,
Right.
making
Right.
sure the kids had strong Wi-Fi, connecting with that. It was just a mess.
Right. Okay.
It was not good.
Okay.
And even in the private sector with kids who probably did have all the things that they needed, that was still like a thing because a lot of them had access to just play video games all day.
Right.
Like they can go on Zoom, but like they didn't have to have their camera on in certain school settings that I taught at, and it's
Okay.
like if their camera's not on,
Okay.
whoa, like first of all, the camera should be on.
Right.
Like they're virtual backgrounds. Like
Right.
we don't care about your background. We're here to learn.
Right.
And I feel like it was so much sensitivity, like, oh, my background, all this, like, and it's like
Right.
it's taking away from like what we're actually here trying to do.
Yeah. What do you
Yeah.
think we've learned through pandemic education?
Well, I feel like some kids unfortunately learn that. I feel like their outtake on it is that school kind of doesn't matter.
Hmm.
Some of the
Why's that?
kids, because I mean, some kids, if your parents are doing well in
Mm-hmm.
life,
Mm-hmm.
if you already have a business in your
Mm-hmm.
name
Mm-hmm.
and you're 14
Mm-hmm.
and you're making money from it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
what are we learning photosynthesis for? I already have a
Right.
business,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
So I feel like it took a lot of like them not having to be in a classroom definitely took a lot away from like the classroom experience. And I
Yeah.
feel like what is ultimately forgotten is the fact that like teachers are facilitators of like skill building,
Yeah.
and kids aren't going to learn necessary skills, even just like working with kids. Like pre-pandemic, when I did a lab,
Mm-hmm.
everyone knew who their lab partner was.
Mm-hmm.
They understood that they had to work together.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I do labs and I'm like, okay, work with your lab partner,
Yeah.
they literally will sit next to each other and have different things on their paper. And I'm like, wait, guys,
Right.
the point is so that you guys collaborate, not just
Right.
work independently. Like,
Right. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Also, to be fair, we're in the first year after it, right? We're in
Yeah.
the first like full year back after it. So like whatever whatever negative or whatever effects that we're seeing are as dramatic now as they're going to be, right? So and I definitely see that they have a tougher time just working with each other.
Yeah, like
Right.
I literally like in the first day, like the first days of school for this school year, one of my eighth graders literally told me like they were just being unruly, and I'm like, wait,
Yeah.
I don't even understand what's happening here.
Yeah.
They were like, why are you so strict? And I'm like, why are you guys so unruly? Like I don't get it.
Right.
And one of the kids said, well, technically we're still sixth graders. And I'm like, well, technically, at the end of this year, you're going to be ready for upper school. You're going to be
Right.
ready for ninth grade. So, sixth grade or eighth grade?
Right.
Like, which one?
True.
You
Good
know?
point. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Like we got to develop. What advice do you offer to a new teacher who is like coming into their teaching career right now?
Good luck. No, honestly, just like stay true to like your mission purpose. Like
Uh-huh.
whatever your teaching statement is, like print it out, hang it up on your wall, especially for your first year
Yeah.
because you will be tested in multiple ways.
Yeah.
I feel like anywhere you are, like
Yeah.
you're gonna be tested.
Yeah.
And mentors, like having a great and strong teacher mentor
Mhm.
who resembles what you would want to be
Mhm.
as a teacher once you're in your career more, you
Mhm.
know? So, like, having the right mentor,
Yeah.
praying,
Absolutely. We prayed up.
self-care first, like
Mhm.
your mental, keeping that in check and not, you know, being easily swayed. Like everyone's not going to be your friend. The
Right.
kids aren't your friends. Like I don't look at them like I'm cool with them, but like
Yeah.
they're not my friends. Like
Yeah.
I'm the teacher,
Yeah.
you know, and making that boundary clear because I feel like especially like we have a lot of young teachers coming in and I know like the younger the teacher, the younger they look.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to fight against that. Like when I was 24 years old
Mhm.
teaching
Mhm.
at ninth graders
Mhm.
in a high school
Mhm. Yep.
and I was 24, like
Yep.
I knew that I had to go in there and like look like a woman.
Right.
Even
Right.
whatever that meant to me. Like I
Right.
had to do more so that
Mhm.
way I would be taken seriously and not like oh, she's a joke. Oh,
Right.
she's just like a young. She
Right.
doesn't know. I'm like,
Right.
no, no, no. I'm here. This is my job. Like,
Yeah.
this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
You know?
I was 21 in my first classroom, and it was at a school where I had PGs, right? So they could be as old as 19, which means like the line between us really was more so in the school rather than in the world, because in like other situations, if I'm as a 21-year-old meeting a 19-year-old, we're just friends. Like I just know you.
Right.
And so like those boundaries are super important in terms of how you hold the classroom and how you do all those things, right? Um, I think teachers are making mistakes when they I think new teachers go into survival mode, right? And we've had this conversation plenty of times before about teachers who exist in survival mode, just trying to make the job work for them and just go about making individual relationships, making kids their friends and stuff, right? What is the benefit to you of those boundaries? Like why are those boundaries so critical to what we're doing in our classrooms?
Because ultimately, like, respect.
Mhm.
I feel like, I don't know, respect is number one for
Mhm.
me. Like,
Mhm.
I'm big on respect. Like, you have to respect me because I respect you.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, yeah.
Okay. I respect that. I
Thank you.
respect that. You gotta give respect to get it. That's a
Period.
that's a Brooklynness of you, right? Do you think students on the East Coast are innately different than students on the West Coast?
Yes.
How?
Lifestyle.
Okay. Yeah,
Lifestyle. The
yeah, yeah,
lifestyle's different. In New
yeah.
York, it's the hustle and bustle, congested.
Yeah.
Out here, it's just like, yeah, I went surfing this morning before I went to class.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
went surfing last night. I caught this big wave, like, you know, so it's
Yeah.
just different
Yeah. That
for
was
sure.
super stereotypical, but you're not wrong.
No, but like that's actually what
No,
I
I know.
hear. Like
I
that's
know.
literally it.
That's literally it.
That's literally it. Like I have a student who comes to class and he's like, "Oh yeah, I surfed this morning." So like I have a teacher, we have a colleague
Yeah,
who
yeah.
literally surfs in the morning. So it's just a
True.
different lifestyle. I mean, honestly, if I had time to surf in the morning, I would probably surf in the morning. I mean, I couldn't do that in New York,
Right.
but
True.
like here I
True.
can,
True.
you
True.
know?
I think the lack of seasonal depression is a real thing. It's like
That's why I moved.
that's fair. That's fair. What keeps you teaching? Like you're in it now. You know the bumps, the warts. You know the goods, the bads. What makes you sign your contract 1 year to the next?
Because I love being Miss Ivory. I
Okay.
love being Miss Ivory. I mean, obviously I have children I have to feed and take care of.
So true.
I mean, but ultimately, if I didn't have children to feed
Yeah.
and take care of, I feel like ultimately having an impact because teachers have had impacts on myself.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I feel like, I want to have an impact on someone. That was like one of my
Yeah.
starting goals. Like when I was 7 years old in class, I'm like, oh, I want my students to remember me. Like, I want
Yeah.
to show my students this. So like, I just remember, like, a teacher is so special, and
Mhm.
even out of all the thousands of students that like I've taught or will teach in my
Mm-hmm.
life, like even if I don't have an effect on all of them, as
Yeah.
long as I have an effect on maybe like five,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
that would make me happy,
For sure. For
Because
sure.
it's like if I can spread my good vibes and my just, my beliefs
Mm-hmm.
down and it's like appreciated from a student,
Mm-hmm.
that's important to
Mm-hmm.
me.
What would you say your mission is? You mentioned that teaching statement or whatever. What's your mission statement as you go into your day-to-day interacting with your classes, your BSU groups, your step teams, whatever?
So my biggest thing is mindset. Like
Okay.
I'm all about mindset, like half full, half empty.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times students like they'll be scared to like answer a question because they don't want to be wrong. But I'm like, if you're not wrong, like someone has to be wrong so we can make it right.
Right,
You know
right.
what I
Yeah.
mean? So I'm just big on like even if it's wrong, like I want you to try
Mm-hmm.
so that way we know like what the baseline is and where
Yeah.
we can go from here.
Yeah.
Like I'm not expecting you to see a lab and complete it all like
Right.
without me saying anything,
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But try,
I love that.
you
I
know?
love that. Awesome. So, as we try to close this up, uh, to me, what Black royalty is like a commitment to education the way it should be, right? It's not so much about Black in terms of a racial conversation. It's more about what are we centering so that we are educating the way we should be, right? Are students at the center of what we're doing, or is the system at the center of what we're doing, right? And I think anybody who is royalty is somebody who has come through the system and who can see what it is and has made a commitment to educate in a way that is like true and really centering students. I think because of that, you're a royalty,
Thank
right?
you. I
And
love that.
my whole goal through this platform is to continue to add value to those royal teachers, those royal educators, and build a network that supports all of us, right? So, if people want to get in contact with the wonderful Miss Ivory, how might they do
Oh wow. Okay. Well, my phone number. No, just kidding.
it?
I'm on Instagram.
Uh-huh.
My Instagram name is Zai Dreams,
Mm-hmm.
ZAI Dreams, because I'm a dreamer and a
Love that.
believer.
Love that.
I don't let anything stop me.
I
If I
love
can
that.
dream it, I can see it. It can happen.
I love that.
So that's me on Instagram, and that's about it. I
And
only have it.
you're also a teacherpreneur,
Oh yeah, totally.
right? Do you think like teaching lends itself to entrepreneurship, or is that just you doing that
I think, well, I've always been a hustler my whole life. I'm from New York City.
naturally?
Like I used to be out on the block selling socks for $2. No, it's like
I'm so
honestly.
glad it was socks.
No, yeah, totally.
Fair enough. Good.
Yeah.
Love it.
Socks,
Yep.
belts,
Yep. Shirts,
lemonade.
lemonade. What you
Outside the
need? I got it.
basketball court. Like I've always had like a hustler mentality where I'm like, I need to do this.
I love that.
And I am slowly but surely doing it now as an adult.
I love that. I
Mm-hmm.
love that. Well, hey, your hustle is always welcome in a Black royalty concept.
Thank you, thank you.
I think your kids have done a wonderful job too. You have played chess and it's been wonderful. I have a gift for you
Oh, thank you.
as
A
a
trucker hat.
Black royalty.
I love that.
If you'd like to be in contact with us, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff.
Does it
Follow
look
us
good?
on blackroyalty.ed. Love the hat.
Love
That's
it.
an excellent hat. It goes with the yellow and black.
We'll find out.
Follow us on blackroyalty.ed. Email us blackroyalty.ed@gmail.com and just tap in. Alex, thank you.